Hello and a warm welcome to our BBC Africa Facebook community. We are live in West London's Heathrow Terminal 5 and joined by music royalty. The Princess of Africa has returned, Yvonne Chaka Chaka. Thank you so much for talking to BBC Africa.
And thank you for having me, Mark.
For those that don't know, how did you become known as the Princess of Africa?
Oh, wow, what can I say? You know, being in the music industry for 31 years, I don't know how to describe that or how to say who is Yvonne Chaka Chaka or who is the Princess of Africa. But I remember going to Uganda for the very first time in 1990. And I was at the airport, and the promoter at the time, Mr. Mike Mukula, said to me, "There's 5,000 people here waiting to see the princess." And me being a girl from Soweto, and I said, "You know, in Soweto we don't have kings and queens and princesses, and what is the princess doing here? What does she want? What's the occasion?" And he laughed, and he said, "They're coming to see you." And I thought, okay, me. And it was just that when I got out of the airport, there were people from Entebbe to Kampala just waiting there, just wanting to catch the glimpse of Yvonne Chaka Chaka. And they all had the placard saying, "We love you, Yvonne, you are our princess." That's how I became the Princess of Africa.
Oh, wow, what a story. And is it fair to say that you've been out of the main stage for over 10 years? Has it been that long since you've graced the main stage?
Well, I've performed in different countries and in different places. You know, my last performance was in March 2016. My big performance, it was called the Woordfeest. It was an Afrikaans show, just like the Afrikafest, but in Stellenbosch University in Cape Town. It went for 10 days, so it was word, poetry, arts, everything, and music. So that was my last show in 2016,
Right.
where I performed. Otherwise, I've just been doing my humanitarian work.
Okay.
I work with the United Nations as a Goodwill Ambassador and doing all sorts of things, you know. I'm a citizen of the world, but first I am an African and a very proud African. So for me, this is giving back to my African brothers and sisters and my children to say, Africa is not a dark continent that everybody believes it to be. Africa is a great continent. All we need is the political will and the willpower to do things for ourselves. So I've decided to be the voice of the voiceless.
And speaking of the Afrikafest that you mentioned, you will be indeed the headline act this coming November. What can people expect from your show?
Well, I'm very excited, you know, to be performing at this great, great festival. You know, thank you to Gradio bringing Africa to England, you know, so you will have great African artists, your Nkansime and other different artists, and obviously Yvonne Chaka Chaka. So I will do what everybody knows me doing, singing, you know, songs like I'm burning up, my heart's on fire, I'm burning up, and new songs that people haven't heard, you know, songs like He's an amazing man, given to us by God. He taught us to love, be free, and forgive. His name is Nelson Mandela. He called his people Rainbow Nation. Holy Shasha Madiba Mandela. So I'm just very excited. You know, I've never stopped performing. I love performing. This is when I'm frustrated, and but being on stage, I get out the frustration because you just sweat it out and you then disseminate the information to the world. So I do it through my music. So the past 31 years being in the music industry, performing worldwide has been a blessing for me. You know, working with UNICEF as their Goodwill Ambassador, I know how is it like for children not to even reach their 5th birthday. So at 50 and performing, I'm very grateful to my fans, to God for giving me my life, and my supporters and my family.
Right.
Yeah.
You mentioned your humanitarian work. How did you actually begin your humanitarian duties or career, so to speak? How did you get involved with that?
My humanitarian work really started by chance. I traveled to Gabon in 2005 And I think it was in 2005 or 2004, I can't even remember. I was asked to be the headliner of a concert which was happening in Gabon, representing South Africa. And it was just amazing. It was the greatest 2 weeks of my life because we had artists from all over Africa. And it was a great jamboree. But my biggest disappointment happened when we got home. One of my musicians had contracted malaria whilst we were in Gabon, and unfortunately she died from malaria. So she was misdiagnosed, and I started doing research. I think it was in June when we came back from Gabon, and I did my own research, and I realized that malaria was curable and preventable, and yet so many people were dying because I must say, prior to that, I was totally ignorant about malaria. I knew nothing. My husband is a medical doctor, but I made sure that my band, my manager, my everybody, my whole team did get their jabs when we traveled anywhere in Africa. But I was clueless about malaria, and when Pumzile died, it suddenly dawned on me that something needs to be done. The first person I called was Nelson Mandela, and all he said to me was that, she is gone, and you have a voice. You can do something. And I said, but what can I do? And he said, you have a voice. But I think God works in wonders. It was just a puzzle, and the puzzle was coming together. In January the following year, I got a call from UNICEF in Ethiopia. They were looking for this Yvonne Chaka Chaka to be a UNICEF Goodwill Ambassador. So when I narrated my story to them and told them that in the past 6 months, I've just been doing research about malaria, and I would like to be educated about malaria and educate the world and other people about malaria as well. And they agreed. There were, during that time in 2005, there was a lot of controversy about AIDS in South Africa. But I thought, we need to put something straight before we can have antiretrovirals and things like that, because they do save lives. But there were some problems in South Africa about all of that. And I thought, I'm not a politician, I'm not a policymaker, I'm an entertainer. And if I can do something, I would do what I'm able to do. And I became, the very first UN Goodwill Ambassador to choose a cause. So I became the Rollback Malaria Goodwill Ambassador in UNICEF, a Goodwill Ambassador as well for malaria. And it started that and it has never stopped.
Amazing. With regards to that strength that you have in terms of your ability to touch many with music, you've touched one particular individual by the name of Ice Prince Zemini, who is such a big fan of yours, to the extent whereby he mentioned on social media that he was absolutely starstruck and never had been that starstruck meeting an artist before. And this is from a man that recently signed to Jay-Z's Rock Nation's management. How did that make you feel by getting that kind of praise and endorsement by one of the leading Afrobeat artists of today?
Well, as I said, being in the music industry for 30 years and still being relevant with today's youth, it really humbles me that, young people would want to record with me. So when I met Ice Prince for the very first time, we're flying from Cape Town to Johannesburg, and I didn't know who he was, I must say. And I was with my daughter, and my daughter was like starstruck, and I didn't know who he was. And I think somebody told him that was Yvonne, and he threw himself on the floor at the airport. And I said, please don't do that. And he said, I cannot believe it. This is you, Mama. And, we then started communicating, and he communicated with my son and with my manager. He wanted to record with me. So I do collaborate with young artists. And as I said, I'm 50, I'm an old woman. I don't get
we would never know, Yvonne.
I'm very blessed, and I'm not shy to tell my age, because I really think I am very fortunate. As I said, other people do not even reach 20 or 30 or even 50. So I'm very proud of my age, and I just thank God for borrowing me this oxygen to be able to do the things that He has asked me to come and do on earth. So I'm never starstruck. I performed in Cape Town with Beyonce as well. So I've performed with Aretha Franklin. So I've met so many people. To me, we are all the same. We're all human beings. So we are just given different talents by God. So really, I do not see anyone being better than other. It's just that maybe others are more famous than others, and others have more money than others. But what work do they do to save people's lives and to make people happy? Yeah.
You mentioned, with regards to your illustrious career, you've been performing for over 30 years, and you've not only survived, but you've indeed thrived throughout these evolutionary stages of music. How have you coped with the digital era, and how have you used, things like social media and all these kind of platforms towards your advantage and indeed towards your comeback, with build up towards gracing the stage of Afrikafest 2016?
I must say, Mark, I am very, very slow when it comes to that whole digital whatever. I know we've got the beautiful lady behind this camera now. I'm very slow, but I've got the whole team, working with me who do that. I'm a very private person. I don't do your Instagram and telling people where I am, who I'm with now. I don't do those things, but I think it is important to use social media because, times are changing and everything is fast becoming technology and things like that. So I do my best. I get my team to do all of that, but I'm very, very jealous with some of my things. I hold back. I don't put everything out there, and that is just me. Yeah.
I think with regards to lightheartedness and comedy, because that's something that people tend to share a lot on social media. You were on stage with a comedian, Annie Kasimi, and there was a little joke that was shared between yourselves with regards to President Robert Mugabe and Uganda's President Museveni, with regards to them stepping down. What made you say that, in terms of, even though it's a joke and it was all humorous? What were your thoughts behind that?
As you've pointed it out, clearly it was a comedian. It was a show for the comedians. So obviously people make fun of me, people make fun of Mandela, people make fun of everybody. But I really thought, these are two great leaders, which I've got so much respect for both of them. President Museveni is just one of those presidents when people were not talking about AIDS. He did. And President Robert Mugabe, you go to Zimbabwe, every Zimbabwean speaks perfect English. They speak the language of the Queen. And he gave his people the dignity that they deserve. And he gave them good education and everything. But I really think if there's a 29-year-old boy or a 25-year-old boy, today he still knows the very same president in the country. I don't think that's healthy. But really, who am I to say? If people of Zimbabwe really want him to still be there, we have to abide with that and respect that. Those are my great leaders. Obviously, that was said with a little bit of cheek, and it was just a joke. But I really believe that it would be great that they could write books and tell us about our history in Africa, because they are the best people to tell us about our history, because lest we forget where we come from and who we are. So, I have so much respect for them. Yeah, that's all I can say.
Sure. And speaking of kind of knowing our history and being in contact with our roots, what do you think the importance of a diaspora live event such as Afrikafest means to the diaspora community, not only just in the UK, but indeed in Europe and America?
Well, as I said, you need to really thank companies like Gradual and other partners who bring Africa to different countries. Like this time, they're bringing Africa to the UK. So it is very important that people know who we are. It's important that we tell our stories, because we've left our stories to be told by other people and they get so distorted. So I'm a strong believer that we should be telling and writing our stories so that our children shouldn't forget who we are, where we come from, and where we're going, and what some of the leaders have done for us to be where we are today. Africa has been, we've had freedom for 50 years, but there's still so many discrepancies around there. So we don't want our children to forget their Africanness. Ubuntu is in Zulu, and where they come from and what they need to be. But they need to know that they are competing in this global space as well. So we're not going to things accordingly, because we need to compete with the best and the rest of the world, and tell our kids that they should be proud of who they are, and they should be proud of their Africanness, and stand bold. I call myself a very proud African woman because I have been given back my dignity.
And finally, with regards to music, we can expect something from you with Ice Prince Sumini, but a lot of fans and supporters want to know, is this going to be a one-off performance with regards to the Afrikafest 2016, or is it the start of a new chapter in your career? Can we expect an album of some sort?
Well, for the past, my last album was recorded in end of 2012, called Amazing Man, with tracks like Yesterday, Amazing Man, Well Organized Man, which means a woman. Songs like Kuzani Bo, this is lamenting about the use of drugs, the use of nyaupe, use of tick, and all those, because, I sing about the things that I see happening around my people. So for me, as I said, music is the best disseminator of information. So we finished recording with Ice Prince. We've done the song already, and it's going to be in his album and in my new album as well. So I have been busy for the past 2.5 years recording. I take my time when I record my music. So probably by the end of this year, I will be finishing recording and mastering my 23rd album. Yeah.
I'm sure I speak for everyone, Yvonne, when I say bring on Afrikafest 2016. We can't wait for your live performance and for your new music. Thank you so much for talking to BBC Africa.
Thank you for having me, BBC, and I'm very grateful to be here and to Graduate and all the other partners and all the other artists who will be there. Let's rock the United Kingdom.